back in 2018, someone comes up to you and they say, hey, a global pandemic is going to be here shortly. It's going to shut down the whole world. It's going to have people locked in their houses. That would have been unthinkable at the time. Now, is the economic collapse of the United States of America unthinkable? Absolutely. But there are some very real economic concerns that are coming up right now, and one of those is the debt ceiling. Now, before I get accused of clickbait for this title, let's take it direct from the source. So Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen just announced that the government is likely to be broke by as early as October if the debt ceiling is not raised. Now, the debt ceiling, that's controlled by Congress, and it's a somewhat useless way to try and keep government spending in check. Now, they actually suspended the debt ceiling back in 2019. They got rid of it. The debt back then was about $22 trillion. Today, that number has gone up to $29 trillion. So direct from the mouth of Janet Yellen, a delay on raising the debt ceiling would not only make the federal government look irresponsible, it would likely cause irreparable damage to the U.S. economy and global financial markets. And in an article from Newsweek, according to estimates from the Congressional Budget Office, funding for programs such as Medicare, Social Security, and supplemental security income likely will be halted in October or November as the government runs out of funding. Now, this really is a big deal, and while it's unthinkable that the U.S. government would ever default on their payments, there is a political element to this issue as well. Now, thus far, Congress has always agreed to up the limit, as the resulting catastrophe for not doing so is absolutely unthinkable. But the reality is that the higher the debt goes, the more painful a default is going to be down the road. And there are those in Congress right now who could potentially oppose this debt ceiling raise. Senator Rick Scott, back in July, he was quoted, "America's nearly $30 trillion debt crisis cannot be ignored. Today, I am urging every member of Congress to protect the fiscal security of our nation by refusing to increase the debt ceiling unless it is accompanied by true structural spending reform. We must end the reckless waste of taxpayer dollars." Now, we all know how polarized and how stubborn politicians have become over the years, increasingly so. Now, could this be when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? The debt right now is a pressing issue, and some projections show that it could reach $49 trillion by 2025 if things keep going the way that they are. Now, obviously, debt can't increase indefinitely. The question is, when do you say enough is enough and we can't keep going down this road? Now, there's no ideal solution here. Both sides have very valid points. Yes, the debt is going to have increasingly negative effects if it's not kept in check. And yes, not raising the debt ceiling is going to have catastrophic consequences. Rock meet a hard place. But what could actually happen in the event of a default? Now, we don't know for sure because it's never happened. Obviously, the psychological impact would be devastating right out of the gate. The sudden realization that the greatest nation on earth has just gone broke. Now, one can only guess at what the behaviors of the masses is going to be in the equity markets, in Bitcoin and precious metals. But if panic ensues, the impact would potentially crater the entire economy. Now, in terms of the logistics of a debt default, everything is going to begin at the Treasury, filter down to the Reserve, and then eventually through the banks and into the economy directly. Now, in all likelihood, government employees are going to get no pay. Social Security payments would stop. Likely Medicare and Medicaid is going to be negatively impacted. The stock market, we would see very likely a significant drop, and interest rates would increase substantially. Borrowing money is going to be expensive, very expensive, or even impossible to obtain, both for individuals and businesses as well. So economic growth would slow, potentially even stop. This would be a very bad situation. Now, if lending is unavailable, the housing market is going to be significantly impacted. Home values would obviously plummet around the country and potentially around the world. The unemployment rate, that's going to rise as businesses, they've no longer got the money to hire people or to pay their employees. Now, the value of the U.S. dollar also very likely to be impacted. It's going to drop perhaps significantly and could even lose its status as the world's reserve currency, which is a very important position to be in right now, which would be catastrophic if that was lost. Now, your buying power with the dollar would be greatly reduced in everyday items, food, fuel, everything else is going to become very expensive very quickly. Now, the announcement from the U.S. that's going to circle the globe, impacting virtually every single country on Earth. Now, the Treasury Department actually does have the ability to take extraordinary measures to avoid a complete default. They can actually take money from federal retirement programs. So some of the accessible funds to them, the Civil Service Retirement and Disability Fund, Postal Service Retiree Health Benefits, and Government Securities Investment Funds. These funds could actually be raided until the debt ceiling is finally approved, and then, of course, theoretically, the money would be replaced. Now, the question, of course, is what happens if these retirement funds are taken and the debt ceiling is not raised? So, realistically, will the economy collapse and the debt ceiling not be raised come October? Highly, highly unlikely. Government knows they can't allow this to happen and will most certainly come to some sort of an arrangement. They've done this almost 80 times, played this game since back in 1960. The process is usually just a way for the politicians to posture and to make demands and try and get their way. So economic collapse, very unlikely. About as unlikely as a global pandemic. Is silver a good investment? That link is above. What happens to silver in recessions? I'll place that link down below. Please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.